try and stay aware of the fact that you're one of the aspects of the practice is you're practicing experiencing that you're not the body. This is one of the major barriers to getting free from the personality, because the personality and the body are related to one another. You know what I mean? The personality thinks this is its body, right? And so they're synonymous. The personality and the physical body are synonymous. So we're practicing being aware that I am not the physical body. If you have your eyes closed and you are aware of being aware, if you have your eyes closed and you are aware of being aware, it's possible to experience the space of that awareness is beyond the body. Can literally experience that your awareness is not limited by the skin. Your awareness is not limited by the body. The awareness is a space within which the body is occurring. If you close your eyes, you can actually experience that. The body is occurring in awareness, right? And then when you go back to thinking, the thinking process will say that the awareness is in the body, doesn't it? Yeah, most everybody thinks the personality is awake. The personality is aware, don't they? That's where awareness comes in. You know, most people think I am aware, right? Well, who is the I that's aware? Me, the personality. I am aware. Okay. That can only be maintained by a mental process because it's not true. If you close your eyes and allow yourself to be aware of the awareness, the evidence is right there that it's not true, that you're not limited by the skin of the body. If you practice this over time, I can't emphasize this enough. One of the barriers, one of the things that causes people to stop practicing meditation is that they have the conclusion or the thought arises, oh, this isn't working, this isn't making any difference, this is uncomfortable, this is uncomfortable, and it's not working, I'm failing at doing this. This is very common that people have an experience of that when they're beginning to practice meditation. Why? Because in the beginning of practicing meditation, you're not going to experience meditation. That's why we call it a practice, not a performance. If it was a performance, you would be failing. But it's not a performance, it's a practice. So you start practicing. What are you practicing? Practicing being aware of the body breathing by focusing on the belly moving. That's what I'm practicing. So you just do the practice. See, the thing is this, if you're doing the practice and you are listening to the teaching is telling you that if you stay with the practice, it's inevitable. If you stay with the practice, it's only a matter of time before you begin to wake up. There's nothing else that can happen. That's the only possibility. So really what it boils down to is whether or not you can see the process through. That's all. You know, you've been meditating for a while, right? Didn't you notice at some point that during the meditation you started to experience the meditation? Yeah. But that didn't happen in the beginning. No. In the beginning you may be sitting there with your eyes closed thinking the whole time, right? So but if you're practicing, if when that's happening, you're practicing, in other words, you're bringing your attention to the belly breathing, it may bounce right back to thinking, okay, bring it back. It may bounce right back to thinking, okay, bring it back. It may bounce right back to thinking, and you may stay in thought for a while and not notice that you're thinking, right? And then after some time passes, it's like, oh, I'm sitting here thinking. Oh, I'm supposed to be watching it. Okay, I'll bring my attention back. So if that goes on through the time of the practice session, that's a perfect practice. It's a perfect because how can it not be a perfect practice if you're practicing? Because if you're practicing, you're not performing. You're not attempting to experience meditation. You're practicing meditation. And by practicing meditation, eventually over time, if you stick with it, if you persevere, if you're patient enough and you're diligent enough over time, you will start to experience meditation. You'll start to experience as you sit there and you're paying attention to the body breathing, at some point, you'll start to experience something that we could call meditation. And what you start to experience is you start to experience being the awareness. That's what happens. The way the experience may occur is it may feel like something is opening up, or something is expanding, something's getting bigger, like that. Or it may be an experience, of just feeling a deep sense of relaxation and calmness. But it feels good. It's like a well-being experience. You start having a well-being experience, meaning that you're experiencing being calm, peaceful, relaxed, physically, and then the mind's calming down, gets quieter. As you progress in the practice, you will be able to come into that state of being awareness simply by an act of your will. Simply by an act of your will. Have you noticed that? Anger could come up. Once you practice for a while, anger could come up, which is a useless emotion, right? It's like one of the things my teacher says is that there's only one thing to say about getting angry, is that if you allow that to happen, you're stupid. Because it has no value at all. It wastes your energy, it makes you crazy, right? It reinforces the idea that you're separate from the rest of the world. It reinforces it, doesn't it? Yeah, because if you're angry and frustrated, you're angry and frustrated because people or situations aren't going the way they're supposed to. That's why you're angry, right? So by practicing meditation, you come to a natural realization they're supposed to be doing what they're doing. That's the truth. What's happening is what's supposed to be happening, right? So instead of resisting it, instead of fighting with it, instead of being crazy about it, instead of struggling with it, instead of coping with it, you start to relax and allow yourself to experience the truth, which is that everything that's happening is supposed to be happening. Who the hell are you? Who the hell are you to conclude that you know what's supposed to be happening? Isn't that playing God? And if you do think you know what's supposed to be happening, what's it based on? What's it based on? What's it based on? So the practice of meditation is a practice that requires patience and diligence. You've got to get to a point where how long it takes for you to realize the truth no longer matters. This is very important, right? How long it takes for you to wake up and experience your true nature no longer matters. If that's the case, you're pretty close. Right, because if you learn through the teaching that you are already who you're trying to be, why would you try? You see? If you're already who you're trying to be, then what you're doing when you're practicing meditation is stopping trying to be it. You're stopping trying to be what you already are. So why should you care how long it takes? Because you're already there. All you're doing is trying to relax enough to benefit from the experience. That's all it is. See, people take it, the personality takes this process and turns it into something that it's not. The personality takes this process and turns it into a trip, turns it into something that you have to do something and change something, and then if you do something long enough and change something consistently enough, maybe you'll experience the truth. But that's not the case. The personality will take the teaching and keep turning it into that over and over again, right? Waiting, you're waiting for something to happen, waiting to wake up, waiting for enlightenment to happen, hoping that it'll happen to you, trying to figure out what you can do to make it happen faster. If you're in that way of relating to it, you've got a lot a path in front of you yet. So David Radin, who is a Zen master and who is a close friend of mine, and he's become a close friend and a teacher. I don't consider myself necessarily a Zen student. I don't consider myself a student of Hinduism. I don't consider myself a student of any of the Taoist teachings. I don't consider myself a student of any particular teaching. I consider myself a student of the truth. And all of those practices are related to the truth in their own way. Different practices, different ways to talk about the truth, but the truth is the same through all the practices. So it's not in my script to become a Zen student or a Hindu or a Taoist student or any of those kinds of things. It is in my script to be a student of the truth and practice experiencing the truth. And that may not be true for you. Some people become Zen students and they practice Zen and have a Zen teacher and they do the whole Zen trip, right? Some people do the Hindu trip and they practice Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta depends more on knowledge than the practice of meditation, because in Advaita Vedanta, what they consider to be the source of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance. Well, I mean, we consider that to be the source of suffering in Zen too, but we're not going to learn our way out of it. We're going to learn about it, but we're going to practice our way out of it, right? Because knowing about it isn't good enough. Your brain is not going to change just because you hear something. I mean, that's the case for most of us, you know. There are people who hear the truth and wake up as soon as they hear the truth. But don't count on that being the case. That's not the case for most of us. So I was looking at something that was written by David Radin, my Zen friend, and he was talking about meditation. And this came from a talk that he gave about meditation. And of course, they call meditation Zazen in Zen practice. The word Zazen means meditation. He says, I would like to give a talk this morning about the basics of Zazen practice to clarify, if possible, the basics of the actual practice of Zazen or meditation, so that when you sit down to practice, you don't have to deal with any doubt or question about what you should be doing. Even though it is actually impossible to explain, I'll try anyway. The difficulty people have in practicing meditation is they're coming into it with an I am self residing in the thinking activity. What does he mean by that? The difficulty people have in practicing meditation is that they come into it with an I am self residing in the thinking activity. So what he was talking about there is that when people come in to practice meditation, given that their default state is to be the person in a body, that's what will start practicing meditation, the person in a body. That's what he's saying. Right? When that self tries to practice meditation, it thinks it has something to do with manipulating the thinking activity. By thinking that peace comes through suppression of thought. And no matter what I say, no matter what I say, I have people come back to me and talk about meditation this way. Why? Because the personality will override what I'm saying by the thoughts that it produces in that person's head. Because the personality doesn't want to be left out, right? The personality wants to participate in practicing meditation, right? Now, when I say that, I don't mean the personality is actually real, right? And it wants to practice meditation. The thoughts that appear in your mind say that, that's all. Since the personality isn't real, the only thing that can produce the appearance of a personality is the thought process. I think, therefore I am, right? I think, therefore I am. It's not true. It's not true, but it seems to be true. And when that statement was made, nobody questioned it, right? Because it seems pretty common. Most people think that who they are is who they are because they think that they're who they are. Even though it's not true, and it cost. But the practice of meditation is not performed by the thinking activity, so the self that you take yourself to be has nothing to do. Has nothing to do. There is nothing that needs to be done, or there's nothing needs to be done to or with the mind to practice meditation. This is critical. This is critical. This is one of the big ways that people get stuck and end up not practicing meditation and then get frustrated. That's why it's important to have a teacher. So the teacher can guide you when you stray away from the actual practice, right? So when you're practicing meditation, it's very important to understand that all you need to do during the time of the practice is the technique. What's that mean? Just pay attention to the belly moving as a place to focus attention when you're being aware of the body breathing. When you're being aware of the body breathing. When I say you're being aware of the body breathing, you are the awareness that's aware of the body breathing. You see, if you don't hear that and you're practicing meditation, you probably won't ever get to it. You know what I mean? If nobody ever said to you, you are the awareness that's aware of the body breathing, if nobody ever said that to you and you learned to practice meditation and what the person teaching you said, pay attention to your breath. See the difference? How are you ever going to notice that you're the awareness if the instruction is pay attention to your breath? First of all, it's not your breath. The body's breathing, right? So it's very important to have the specific instruction, and that's why he's talking about it in this particular talk. The mind is just as it is, but we get caught up in judging it or using it or daydreaming. We don't have any other tool besides the thinking activity. If I is immersed in the thinking activity, this is the situation. We don't have any tool other than the thinking activity. This is talking about the limitations of thinking, right? If the only thing you have at your disposal to live your life and try and live it effectively, try and do what works in your life, right, is the thought process, you're very limited. You're very limited. You're not going to be able to have success past a certain point, right? Because you can only bring to bear on the situations that you find yourself in based on whatever your past experience has been. Isn't it true? Yeah, because your past experience is your memory of everything that you've ever learned about yourself and your life and the world and other people, right? So whatever you can't think is unavailable to you. Check it out. Whatever can't show up in thought is unavailable to you. And most of what there is in terms of knowledge, most of what there is in terms of what's available to you is not available in your thought process. Your thought process is so limited in compared to unlimited awareness. Unlimited awareness, they call it wisdom. They call it wisdom, right, instead of intelligence. Because what wisdom is unlimited intelligence. That's wisdom, right? But intelligence, when we talk about it in terms of what you have available through thinking, is very limited. That's very limited. So the more you practice meditation, gradually you begin to get access to your true nature. You gradually begin to get access. You gradually begin to get access to that which is beyond your thinking. And what happens as this begins to take form, as this begins to occur, what happens is you naturally begin to realize that when you're in situations that are stressful, or when you're in situations that stimulate a lot of strong emotion, you naturally begin to realize that when that happens, you should rest as awareness so you can get access to unlimited intelligence and use that to take the next action you take instead of the limited thought process. Does that make sense? Yeah, you want to be unlimited when it comes to what you're using to respond to life, right? So that you can develop an ability to respond instead of react. A reaction means that you're repeating a behavior that comes from your past. React, right? React, reaction. You're repeating a behavior that comes from your past, and therefore it must be limited, right? Because that behavior may not be what is needed in order to produce the result you're trying to produce, right? So you have to understand the limitations of the thought process, and you have to understand that it's possible for you to get access to an unlimited amount of intelligence, and we call that wisdom. And when you have access to that unlimited intelligence that we call wisdom, and you use it to respond, then you can be responsible. When you have access to that unlimited information, that wisdom, and you use it to respond, then you can be responsible. And when you're being responsible, you can use what they call in the teaching skillful means. You ever hear that phrase? Skillful means. It comes from Buddhism. Skillful means when you are using access to your awareness as the source from which you're responding to your life. That's skillful means. When you're just using your thought process, that's not very skillful. And all you have to do to see the evidence for that is look at your past. If you can tolerate that. In my case, it's not too easy. You know, I don't want you to end up like me in terms of having to make every mistake in order to learn. It's not necessary. If you practice meditation and you are able to relax sufficiently and calm the mind, you will have access to that which will allow you to be responsible. It will allow you to be responsible, allow you to respond to life in a way that shows skill, skillful means, like that. So it's very important to understand, just do the practice. Just do the technique. And when you do the practice, don't judge and evaluate the practice. There's no such thing as a good or a bad practice. You just do the practice every single day. And if you do it, and you're willing to be patient and diligent, and you're willing to trust the truth, you're willing to trust what you've been learning from the teaching, eventually what you've been learning, what you've been practicing will come together. But you've got to be patient enough for that to happen. Don't forget, you've been practicing being a personality for years, 24/7, right? So to sit down and practice meditation and think that that's just going to stop, that's naive. That's not going to stop. It will gradually begin to be different. As you practice meditation, your personality will gradually begin to be different. Why? Because now it is being balanced by the awareness, because you're aware that you're aware now. You understand? You're aware that you're aware. You're not just aware, but you're unaware that you're aware, or you think the personality's aware. No, now you're aware that you're aware, and you know yourself to be the awareness instead of the personality. And that sets up a different situation in terms of how you are responding to life and responding to the world. Because now that the awareness is present, it will balance the personality out. When the personality goes off the rails, it'll bring it back. It will be able to see when your thoughts are crazy, because now the awareness is there to see when your thoughts are crazy. Without the awareness being there, there's no place from which to see your thinking. You get that? Until you're awake and aware, there's no place from which to see the thinking. You're being the thinker. And that's a very limited situation, and it's a situation that is going to cause a lot of mistakes and a lot of suffering. And while that situation is going on, there won't be any well-being, because the program that's running, that's producing your behavior, is not designed for well-being. And so you will be seeking happiness, you'll be pursuing happiness. But once the awareness is there, you begin to experience well-being. And when you're experiencing well-being, your ability as a personality to be calmer starts to be apparent, just because you feel more relaxed, you feel calmer, the mind is quieter, the body is calmer, so you can be more present to life instead of in your head about it.